It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris.
And my name is Mike.
And this week we have the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, like we promised you guys last weekend. It dropped on Monday.
These Monday trailers are really undercutting the podcast that we record a day before.
That's right. It's given us some time to digest and chew on all that good stuff. So we'll talk that out in today's episode. X-Men, the movie, will announce a writer soon. We are in, as you've so non-subtly titled, like the mutant era of Marvel right now.
It's here. It's here, and we're still curious if it's gonna be part of a Marvel reset or not. We don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows. We don't even know, but we're excited for it. We'll talk about it towards the end of the show, including the movie and the X-Men 97. We're all up to date on that. Kraven, the Hunter, is delayed to December, Mike. I know. I can feel the tears coming off your face right now after the success was Madam Web was. So
it's like when you don't invite somebody to a party and then they text you saying, "Oh, I'm going to be late." It's just like, I didn't want you to come anyway. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, I'm late, and hopefully at the end of the day they just don't show up, right? Like maybe straight to streaming, and that's all we all really want for Kraven. But we got some news about that at the end of the show. We're going to riff on that a little bit and more, Mike, and more.
Yes, Chris is fresh off of a baby shower that he has returned from. Not my own, a different one. So, Chris, I believe you told me you just came straight from a brewery. So
yes.
Is that what our listeners should be expecting?
They should
over
expect
the next
that.
hour.
Yeah, over the next hour. I came from this baby shower was like a co-ed, like a joint baby shower. So it's not like, oh, we're not doing the games. We're just like, here's some snacks. Here's some camaraderie at a brewery. Literally, this brewery, I'm going to tell you, Mike, was an adventure to get to because along the way to get there, it was at the end of an industrial park. Like, you have to go through all this industrial park to get to it.
I knew you were going to say that. Like, everyone loves to open breweries in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so I literally asked my like, did you put in the right address? And she's like, yep, I did. I'm like, okay, let's go. And we get there, and it's the end of the industrial park. It's not even in the middle. It's at the end of it. So that's fine. One walk in. This brewery is split. It's just a big open building, right? Split into two. There's the bar area and the party area, and then another part where literally since 1 p.m. they've been practicing line dancing, Mike, to country music. So literally you could see all these people, dozens of people doing line dancing over there, and they shut down around 2:30. A live band shows up with a fiddle and everything, Mike, and they start playing country music. And guess what? The line dancers get right back up and start going at it. I don't know if they were practicing for this concert or if it was just a happenstance along the way. But boy, howdy, did my 90s country Rain Man kick in here in some of these songs, like growing up in Indiana.
How very Louisville of you.
It was Indiana. This is Indiana of me, so I'm going to...
Hey, you were close enough, though, right? Were you on the border, or were you, like, driving up to Indy?
Well, we were in Indianapolis. Or not Indianapolis. We were in Indiana. It was about half an hour from us, so... where we originally started the podcast, where my apartment was, we were right down the road from that apartment from 10 years ago. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily Louisville, but I could probably find one of these in Louisville as well. Yeah, you're right.
So Chris is going to be channeling the line dancing energy on the podcast this week.
And also, I tried everything on the menu. I tried everything on the menu pretty much that they had there. So like they actually had a drink there. So they had a banana sour. I don't know if you're a sour fan or not, Mike. This is for the adults of the show, 21 plus. So they had a banana sour. Didn't taste really banana-y, but I like a good sour. I'm like, I'll try it. But what they had not on the screen but on tap was a bomb pop sour, like a very sweet bomb pop sour. And I love a bomb pop flavor, so that was delicious to me. I don't know if that's up your alley or not, but
I mean, I didn't even know. I thought sours were kind of the opposite of sweet beers, but I guess they're starting to hook around the corner and come back into something sweet.
It was sweet and tart, like I wouldn't say sweet tart, even though that's in it, but like it was a sweet drink, but still had that tartness on the end of it. So it's not like an IPA. You're not getting the hops, you're not getting the bitterness of it. It was still pretty sugary, I think, all around, but yeah, it was very summery, right? It feels like that good summer kickoff here at the end of the day. So had a good time. So yeah, you can expect that out of me for the rest of the show. I've got a White Claw here to compliment me along the way. So
He's keeping the party going, folks.
that's right. I'm here to celebrate. We're all here to have a good time. Let's jump into it, Mike. At the end of the show, we'll talk about what I got to watch this week, which was Fallout, half of the series. Wink, wink. But Mike, you were able to watch some other stuff, and I'm really, really super curious about the second one because it sounds like you may have been watching some adult material.
Great. I'm so glad you don't know about it because I just learned, so I can fill you in. But first off, I have to come back around and say I finally finished watching the most recent season 2 of Tokyo Vice, which I brought up on the show a few weeks back. It's on HBO Max and stars Ansel Elgort. Who else is in it? I always forget his name. Ken Watanabe. He's in it. And it's just a great, kind of hard-boiled journalist detective show set in 90s in Tokyo at kind of the transition between newspaper and the internet, the Yakuza. So I wanted to wait to give my official recommendation until I kind of caught up on everything that's out there. So there's 2 seasons out. The show creator has plans for a third. Hopefully they'll get a renewal because I'd love to watch another season of this show. So this is my urging of you to go out and watch Tokyo Vice on HBO Max because it's great. It's awesome. It does require a little bit of your attention, though, because it ebbs and flows between English and Japanese because there's English-speaking characters and obviously Japanese-speaking characters because it's set in Tokyo. So, it commands your attention, so you'll have to kind of put the phone down for the most part, which is even hard for me these days. So check it out, Tokyo Vice on HBO Max. The second season just wrapped.
I'm going to be honest, I honestly thought this was an anime. The name of it sounds like an anime before I looked it up. And
no, you're not wrong. I told my wife I had been watching this show, on and off for the last couple of weeks, and my wife hasn't caught any of it yet. So when I finished it, I was kind of describing it to her, and she was just like, "Oh, is this an anime?" I was like, "No, this is all live action," which felt kind of weird to say. "Oh, it's live action." No, it is a TV show that just happens to take place in Tokyo. But you do bring up an interesting point. We don't really get a whole lot of kind of live action Japanese representation kind of in the United States. It does seem to be primarily animated, right?
Yeah. Well, I would also say I just looked it up, and the actress Rachel Keller, I believe she's in this as Samantha Porter. I'm on Wikipedia reading this off. She was in Legion as the girlfriend of David Keller.
Okay.
Stevens,
yeah, she's a main character in the show. That's great.
Yeah. So to bring it back to superheroes, we have a Legion reference in here, but continue on to this title that I can't wrap my head around it. Let me know.
I cannot take credit for plucking this obscure gem from Amazon Prime. It was recommended to me through the TikTok algorithm, and I took the algorithm up on its offer. And it's a movie called Hundreds of Beavers. That's right. It's called Hundreds of Beavers. Came out this year.
Ooh, okay.
It is the best way to describe it. It's like a black and white silent film in the vein of Looney Tunes and Monty Python. It's like a small crew that went out into the Wisconsin wilderness in the winter and made this slapstick live action cartoon, for lack of a better term, about a man who is vengeful against Mother Nature that took his apple cider farm away from him. So he goes out on a rampage to exact revenge on all the woodland creatures that have wronged him. And the best part about this is all of the woodland creatures are all people essentially in mascot costumes. So when he's trying to hunt down a rabbit, it's just a person in a rabbit-like costume that you would see in Madison Square Garden or on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The beavers are, chewing down the forest to build this gigantic wooden coliseum on a frozen river, and it's all these giant beaver mascot costumes. It's just absolutely hilarious. The density of gags is out of control. There is some sort of wacky thing happening every 10 seconds. It's a labor of love for sure. And the budget of this movie is only like $150,000, which is basically a nickel in the term of a movie budget. And I was happy to see it. It's made double its money back through the box office, which like $300,000, not a lot.
Yeah.
But this is for sure going to launch careers of the filmmaker for sure. This is going to be a cult classic. I went and I looked at their Instagram, and it looks like they're kind of touring the movie around the country. So they did like a Great Lakes tour, and they toured it around there. And it's just so much fun. It's technically, I mean, when I say it's not streaming, I mean it's not streaming for free. If you go, like, I'm sure it's on like Apple TV. We rented it on Amazon Prime. Maybe it's on like YouTube as well. You can rent it there. But we got it. It's a $5 rental. We had, delay your Amazon shipment for a day or two. You start to rack up some of those like digital coupons. So we got it for like $3. It was amazing. We had some friends over last night and we watched it. And it's just hysterical. It's like so weird. It's relatively family friendly. I mean, there's a lot of cartoon violence in it, but it's so funny. It's so weird. You got to go check it out. Hundreds of Beavers, wherever you get your VOD content.
for those who may or may not believe in Mike's claims here, it is sitting at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 80% on Metacritic. So obviously generally favorable all around. But I do see a review here that says, an overstuffed live-action homage to the golden age of animation that's bursting with ingenuity and personality. So absolutely would love to see this. How long do you think this movie is, Mike, offhand? Is it like a 90-minute kind of thing?
So I do have to say, this is my only critique of the movie, and I didn't even really want to critique it at all on the show because I don't want people to have a reason not to watch it, because I think it's worth watching it no matter what. But it is like a little long. Like when I say it's like a labor of love, you can tell that the filmmakers were just like, we're not pulling anything out. We stood out in the snow half naked, the real snow, to get these shots. They're all going in the movie. So I think it's like 109 minutes, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
Yeah,
so.
I think it would have been better nestled around like 85, 90 minutes personally. But still, it's fantastic. It's great. You got to check it out.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I want to go ahead, Mike, since you brought up some stuff, I'm going to go ahead and prep everybody because we have the disadvantage of recording on Sundays, as we'll talk about in our first topic with Deadpool and Wolverine, but also at the end of the things that happen on Saturdays we'll talk about. But next Saturday literally is Star Wars Day and Star Wars Celebration, if I remember correctly. And with that, on Friday, I forgot, my wife has forgotten, I have tickets to see The Phantom Menace in theaters again on its 25th anniversary. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm excited to go see it. And I did know that a couple other I think all the other Star Wars movies might have like a one-off kind of thing that Saturday or that weekend in theaters. So if anyone is looking for things to do, watch a movie, there's nothing new out. You've already seen hundreds of Beavers on streaming. You're like, I gotta get out of the house. I gotta see them. Don't forget, Star Wars is coming to theaters next weekend, and Star Wars Day, which is May the 4th, be with you, Mike. Which a lot of people. Well, I want to get ahead of that rather than being on the back end of it on the other side. So I'm pretty excited to revisit The Phantom Menace in theaters. I remember, again, we've talked about this till we're blue in the face. The toys, the promotions, the Taco Bell promotions, everything about The Phantom Menace. Like the biggest toy craze known to man when The Phantom Menace came to theaters. And I feel that in my bones every day because I grew up in a place where none of the stuff was. So every time we went out to Walmart, which was a 30-minute drive, or we went to Taco Bell, which was a 30-minute drive, I would be just like, I don't know, enveloped in all of this marketing material for Star Wars and The Phantom Menace. So I'm pretty excited.
Want the plastic Pepsi can carrier that is like the giant tank in the first movie that carries the little can,
it's the droid.
Droids.
It's the droid carrier that is a can cooler. Yeah.
I just want it. There's no. I'm not gonna spend any money on it. Please do not send me eBay links, people, saying it's right here. It's just $800.
So it's not $800 because this is actually saved in my eBay already, Mike. Don't worry. It's saved because I told my wife, I'm like, if I ever came across an extra little bit of cash or I got a bonus or something, I would probably buy one to have in my basement because, Mike, my basement is an experience. It's not just a hey, go to the basement. It's an experience. So I would love to have one, but it's not something I'm like I need to have it. It's more of a want to have at the end of the day because it is cool. I always remember the Pepsi vending machines that had the Anakin and the pod racing scene on them.
Oh yeah.
So if I was like, if I could get a Pepsi vending machine downstairs, I just carried. Shout out to the listener Jason. We carried a 200-pound television down my stairs this week, and I want a vending machine down here. Hell no, man! I have talked myself out of anything heavier than that tube TV forever because it was a nightmare.
I'm not trying to talk you back into it because I do not know how heavy a vending machine is. I'm sure you have done or will do your research if it happens. But me and my wife did just add a smaller side deep freezer to our kitchen because the little tiny drawer freezer that came with our way too expensive new refrigerator is like too small, which is just really annoying to spend a lot of money on a new fridge. And it's like, why is the freezer so dang small? So we got a deep freezer on Amazon for like $100, and this thing is like the deceivingly light. Like it makes me think like, how does this is even going to get cold? Like I'm able to pick it up just with the force of pushing my two hands together. I'm not even gripping on anything. So I have a feeling can vending machine will be much heavier indeed. But I'm just saying it could be deceptively lighter than a big giant TV.
Well, Mike, as someone who lives in the Midwest, I've got a garage deep freezer already, buddy. Don't you worry. I'm already set on that. But I maybe I might just talk myself rather than a can dispenser, Mike. I might just settle for an under the counter soda dispenser with like 3 sodas.
That's the right answer.
Yeah,
I'm glad you said it.
So I might go down that route later, down the road because
I'm looking at this droid cooler right now, Chris. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine. This is great. This is where the podcast really comes to life.
I keep forgetting that it's actually a cooler. I always think of it as kind of like a novelty like carrier, but there is indeed a small little reservoir that you can put in it that you can put liquid in and freeze. Like it's not going to be like probably the best cooler on the planet.
If you don't drink these the same day, they're not cold anymore. Yeah. After that it's done, but like same day.
Yeah. And listeners, if you don't already know, it's not just like the vague shape of a carrier. It also has like little droid heads that you can put on top
put them on the
cans.
You have my wife calls them Roger Rogers. They're not just droids. She calls them Roger Rogers. So you can have a whole army of Roger cans on there because you don't have to do Pepsi. You don't have to do Mountain Dew because those are the two promos. But like, you may be sipping on your Dr. Pepper coconut cream with a droid topper on top of that, Mike. It's what I'm saying.
Ooh, that would be really cool. I know these things. I'm looking them up on eBay. They're hundreds of dollars. So, I mean, no one might want to take a chance on it. But imagine taking like this cooler into like an auto body shop and be like, can you hit this with like the Pearl Essence, tan paint job? Like, what? Because it's just formed plastic. So if you're really trying to go accurate to life, I'm sure the real life droid carrier in the movie had a little bit of a paint job on it.
Obviously it was all CG back then, right? For CG. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually redirect you. I'm taking you out of the auto body shop. I'm putting you in the Warhammer 40K shop because those guys know how to paint plastic. If you want to paint plastic,
if we weathered it and kind of put like some like slight laser,
couple blaster bolts. Oh man. Oh, this is sounding more and more likely in my book, Mike. You might have sold me on this.
If anyone out there is in the live stream chat on any of the places that we currently live stream this show, please pressure Chris to buy one of these.
Yes, thank you.
He like we stated, he's fresh off a brewery. Yeah, he's drinking a White Claw.
I'm impressionable. We're
trying to get him to spend hundreds of dollars.
I sold my pinball machine this morning, so I've got space and cold hard cash. To spend.
This one is $450, and it ships from Japan, which I find really really funny. So I don't know if this is a product of Japan or if it has any like Japanese like writing like molded underneath it. That would be even cooler, to be honest.
Yeah, they probably Star Wars is not as big over there probably, so they've just been sitting on it waiting for some idiot like me to buy it whenever I've had too few many drinks. But we'll see. We will see. But it's Star Wars Day coming up. Celebrate Star Wars Day how you celebrate them safely. With no real lightsabers, those are dangerous, but have a good time. Watch your favorite Star Wars movie or show. Let's shift into gears, Mike. This is where the show comes to life. We had a Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, Mike. The official Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, right? We had a teaser before, and it was very teasers. It kind of gave some plot points with Deadpool, but this is where literally Hugh Jackman shows up for the first time in this. And I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, he's probably a main point in this trailer throughout the whole thing, dealing with not only Wolverine's journey and his trauma and coming to deal with it, but also, having to deal with Deadpool at the end of the day.
Yeah, to set the record, I believe this very first teaser trailer dropped during the Super Bowl, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So not too long ago, but long enough to where I had forgotten that Logan was not in the first trailer. We only see his silhouette and his claws retract. So he is all over this trailer. This kind of goes maybe to lean towards the fact of before we weren't entirely sure, like, oh, is this like a Deadpool movie where like variants pop up? We see some Wolverine cameos, or maybe he like shows up in like the third act or something like that. Then we got the title reveal that is called Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay, well, that solidifies a little bit more, and I think this trailer goes to show you, oh, this feels very like buddy cop, Wolverine, Deadpool. We're gonna have a lot of Logan in this, it feels like.
Right, and he is the much like this show, he is the dour, sad, person who's dealing with it, Mike, like you, when we talk about movies and you're just sad and all over it. And then there's Deadpool, who, yes, he's trying to save his world, but he is just driving Wolverine nuts. He's just driving him up a wall, it seems. Like, there are some clips in here, if you slow it down, you can see it looks like they're fighting, right, in a car at one point. He's got him in a leg lock, and he shoots Wolverine in the ribs a couple times. So it looks like in this movie they're gonna they're gonna fight a bit, but they're gonna have to be buddies along the way as well, in that words. But go ahead, Michael, before, and we'll jump into the next bullet point. Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I was going to say, I've really been diving into the comments and the kind of just reaction to the trailer overall, because like, I feel like I'm like on the meta game side of this, right? What is this going to do for Disney? What is this going to do for the MCU and Marvel at large? It's the only Marvel movie we're getting the entire year. Hopefully this is enough to kind of satiate the audience that's been kind of trained on just a plethora of Marvel content every single calendar year, and it seems like people are hyped. I've seen people saying, finally, yes, I'm ready, I'm finally excited again. Like, I haven't felt like this in a while after watching a trailer. I haven't really seen any dissenting opinions at all. Like, one random person I saw on Threads was like, oh, this is gonna like dishonor the legacy of like Logan or whatever.
If it did, Hugh Jackman wouldn't come back. Like, he would end on a high note if he thought that was where he wanted to end at the end of the day.
And exactly. And when Logan came out, we weren't really onto this whole multiversal kind of pivot for the universe too. So now that we know like literally anything's possible out there with all of these different universes, it's just like, it was never just Logan. And actually too, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've seen Logan. Even that movie postulates that movie itself is kind of its own universe, right? Because it takes its own twists and turns to give us that version of Logan where we pick up.
I would say the X-Men universe continuity is okay at best, but like when you like look at, like, if you look at First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse, 30 years of movie, and the kids only look like they aged 2 years, like, it's pretty rough along the way anyway. Fox didn't care about this stuff, so you could say any of those movies, any Foxman movie could be its own universe at the end of the day. And Deadpool has always played with that, right? Even the end of Deadpool 2, where he goes and takes Cable's teleporter and goes to all the different universes and times. Like, he deals with Green Lantern, he deals with what was the X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's always been kind of like, do with this as you will. There is no real concrete time or universe along the way, right? But you mentioned multi-universes, and this is the next word I literally have in my notes, is costumes. We get to see Hugh Jackman in a comic book / X-Men 97 accurate costume for the first time in 24 years of him playing the character, rather than just a tease at the end of, not Logan, what was the one before that, the Wolverine, right, where they showed it in a briefcase. So absolutely could be a Hugh Jackman from a different universe. Obviously, he's dead in Logan. Maybe he pulls him out before it dies. We don't know. We want to see this in July when it drops, like everybody else. But I think the trailer does a good job not giving away many big story beats, and I would say not giving away any huge cameos, as have been rumored upon rumored upon rumored. Thousands of people will be in this movie, but I really don't think they will at the end of the day. For that. And then lastly, my last word on this is cuss words. It's very R-rated, so hallelujah.
Yeah, the cocaine bit is there right at the end, I think.
Oh yeah, where he says Feige says we can do anything but cocaine, and Leslie Uggams goes through every other street word for cocaine.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like just a signal out there to the audience. It's just like, oh yeah, we were allowed to do whatever we want. I think Shawn Levy also was in an interview or something recently, and he said that you do not have to be like an aficionado of the entire MCU. You can be like a novice. You can just come right into this movie and watch it and have a good time. So that's good too, because that is something that Marvel needs, right? So much of this stuff, especially since the Chapek explosion of make more faster, like Marvel has really started to feel like homework. I mean, we are lucky in a sense of like we just kind of eat this stuff up and we'll watch it even if we don't end up liking it, we'll still watch it. But we are in the minority, Chris. Like the general audience, which is going to fuel those box office dollars, does not have the time in their day to go back and watch all of these movies. So I think that's a good sign overall.
I think the only thing from this trailer that I would say you had to have watched in Marvel literally is Loki, because of the TVA, right? Like that is the only thing I think that is from Marvel proper, MCU, Marvel Studios. Well, you have to watch is Loki, is what it looks like. And even if you don't understand Loki, it looks like watch Loki, it looks like they are breaking it down pretty simply for the audience, even from the trailer. Like I can't say the movie, the finale, but like it's like this is a TVA, this is what we're doing, this is what you have to do. It looks like they're literally holding our hands to explain that to us in the trailer along the way for those who didn't watch Loki, right? So that's a plus. I will say, based on just watching this trailer and the few cameos you do see, boy, I hope you have a good memory of the Fox movies, because they are pulling stuff out of like X-Men 2, X-Men First Class, kind of along the way to get to this point. Because there's like a little, you can see Lady Deathstrike, and you can see Azazel from First Class, and I think, but they're both outside Ant-Man's helmet. So if you have watched Civil War or any Ant-Man movie, that's going to be a fun little Easter egg for you along the way, right? But you don't have to understand what a giant man is to understand why that big person exists in this universe.
It's funny. I mean, obviously the cameos to previous X-Men movies are great. Toad's in this trailer, or if he's not, there was like the actor or something was out there on social media confirming that he's in it. And then I saw people in the comments are just like, "Whoa, Toad's back!" And I was like, no one's excited about stop pretending. I mean, obviously we're all hyped for this movie and we can be excited for cameos, but it's just Toad. Did he die in the first X-Men movie? I don't remember.
He got struck by lightning by Storm, because Storm says, you know what happens when a Toad's struck by lightning? And it's like, I don't remember if she even finished that line. I was like, this is the stupidest line I've ever heard in any movie.
I don't remember if... Yeah, but it's like it's just Toad. So I do think it's funny. It's like, okay, settle down. It's just Toad, but it's a nice addition,
People who remember
very much
24 years. I sent you the photo. My 24 years of X-Men movies, 10 appearances by Hugh Jackman to get to this point along the way, and it doesn't feel like 10, does it? When you think back on it, at the end of the day, it kind of blends together. One of the cool things I will say, I sent you this. I screen recorded this, Mike, because I needed you to see it. There's the sequence where Wolverine is swinging at Deadpool in the void, and he's like dodging. It lines up to the Spider-Man 1's fight where he was dodging Flash Thompson's punches from the original Spider-Man 1, and I thought that was a really cool homage. That doesn't mean Spider-Man's in it. It's just fun to have that stuff along the way, right? Like that's the cool Easter eggs. A normal person, like, they're fighting. I get it. I don't need to watch it. But like for someone's like, oh, that looks just like Spider-Man 1's fight scenes. That's really fun to me. And there looks like they're having a lot of fun. Everyone's energy's there. there is some serious tones in this, but like I'm in love, Mike. I don't know if you're feeling it from the trailers yet. It sounds like you are, but I'm gonna make sure, I'm not off balance. To how
well,
I
you'll
feel
have
about
to.
this.
Everyone will have to stay tuned to the podcast because my child is expected to arrive here on this terrestrial plane with the rest of us right around this movie releases at the end of July. So we'll see what happens.
Mike's
here
watching a
for-
cam on
Yeah.
download.
We'll see what happens here on the podcast for sure. Maybe
Mm.
the spoiler cast we review, there could be a crying child in the background. I don't know. I guarantee listeners out there, I will never put you before my family. But
tragic.
we'll see
I
how
would.
things.
I
We'll
would.
see how things tie.
I love you, listeners. I'd put you first. Let's no. But I will say, despite this trailer coming out, there are still always some quote unquote reshoots taking place through May for this movie. The news for this movie, the rumors, the quote unquote truths are out everywhere the past 2 weeks. Of it's almost an explosion. But some things in May. If they're filming some stuff in May, my guess is, Mike, probably some deep cameos that they don't want spoiled right before the movie drops. Right, like things you film last minute, so there's a very tight crew and a very tight editing thing to pop into the movie at the end.
I mean, May, that is so quick. It makes me think they are either just trying to get some super quick pickup shots, something that you literally just drop into like your assembly cut already, and it's good to go. I mean, if it's special effects wise, I mean, Jesus,
Right.
that team is going to be, well, actually, if it's special effects wise, that they could have already started on them because there's probably more computer generated stuff than you just slap the live action plate in there.
Right.
Or maybe it's even like an after credits scene or something like that. Those are usually kind of like second units, that kind of hint towards, because usually like we get 2 after credit scenes in these Marvel movies. We get one that kind of hints to the future of that movie that you just saw, and then sometimes you get one that hints to the future of the MCU at large, and we haven't really gotten something like that.
I would say maybe you either get one of those 2 that you just mentioned or a funny one. There's always a funny one, right? One that's inconsequential. So maybe it could be the funny one. It could be the future one. I'm going to lean, if it is an in-credit scene, it's the future one, because they're still probably reeling from the Avengers 5 stuff, right? Kang Dynasty, the Jonathan Majors firing and probably not rehiring. So they might be trying to set something up for the future of Endgame, not Endgame, that's our next topic, Avengers 5 or Secret Wars, even at the end of the day. So the last minute reshoots aren't bad. They're not fixing the movie this late in the process. They're probably just adding some fun stuff, is what I'm going to say along the way. But I'm hyped. My hands, they're rubbing together, Mike. I'm feeling good. I'm loving Deadpool and Wolverine. Someone else, listener to the show, Patrick, he still thinks Deadpool and Friend would have been the best title for this movie and had Friend in the Wolverine font. But, that SEO, you got to have Wolverine at the end of the day these days. So that's how it rolls. Avengers Endgame is celebrating its 5th anniversary this week. And that also is a reminder that Endgame has a 5-year time jump in the middle of it. So we are closer to the end of that movie than ever before, which is wild to think about. I also saw Infinity War has its 6-year anniversary, and I love both these. They're both great ends to the Infinity Saga. At the end of the day, Infinity War did something that no one thought this movie did by ending on a loss for everybody, right? Like Thanos actually winning, which is wild. But Endgame to come back and kind of end that saga pretty appropriately was wild. So I've revisited some of these over time, but I think it might be time to dive back into those big Avengers movies along the way, Mike. Even Age of Ultron has come back around in its I guess 9-year debut to be something of like, there's some good stuff in here we can pull out of it at the end of the day.
If you say so, Chris. If you say so. I would like to see maybe Ultron pop up again at some point in time, just because I always thought the character was so cool. James Spader's voice was awesome. We see him a little bit in the What If series, but it just doesn't have the same gravitas. So maybe if there's like a Secret Wars movie and everything's coming together,
there's
maybe
the Vision
Ultron back.
The Vision spinoff could revisit him a little bit if there's like an isolated Ultron along the way. So since the Vision's body was essentially made for Ultron, so there's a way to do that. But yeah, Endgame being 5 years ago, that made me feel old. That made me feel real old, like older than saying X-Men 1 was 24 years ago. We'll chalk that up to however you guys feel. But Endgame's on its 5-year anniversary. Avengers 5, we just kind of talked about this a little bit. Will apparently feature a smaller set of characters. I know they're doing some rewrites, right? Fixing the Kang Dynasty. It might still have Kang in it. That's perfectly fine. But they're retooling it to feature a smaller set of characters. Most likely, people who've been in the original Avengers movies, the first 4 along the way, to really tighten that group up and get us some time with them before they do what we assume is going to be a reboot, right, in 2028 along the way. And that
it's pretty wild. I never really thought of that direction. It always just seems so obvious to me. An Avengers movie kind of needs to be big and bombastic, where you bring all of the subsequent movies before it together into this one big fight. But it would be kind of cool to be like a smaller, like edgier movie with like the Avengers that we know and love, and they really get to reconnect again, and not just like fly around a sky beam, or something like that.
The idea of incursions, right, from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in the comic books, the team, the Illuminati, if you will, the Marvel comics were like, we know these incursions are coming, and they didn't tell anybody. And I think that's what, you keep that group tight. Like, Doctor Strange knows the incursions are coming, and this is how we have to defeat them to stay alive before Secret Wars, and he doesn't tell everybody. Because if you tell everybody, what are they going to do, Mike? They're going to panic, right? There's going to be chaos. So keeping a tight group would be a way to kind of work on without having mass hysteria before Secret Wars. So I agree. And to the credit of Marvel, they are looking to begin filming this January 2025 in the UK. So it looks like they are going to commit to the storyline and at least commit to the release date, right, for that May 2026 to get this movie up and going. I like this idea, and most people are like, well, why do you want it? I don't think they're hurrying. They're still taking their time. But the more they delay an Avengers movie, Mike, the less, I guess, return we're going to get on them, right, at the end of the day. Like, we've not had an Avengers movie for 5 years, and we're still 2-3 years away, 2 or 3 years away. So I don't want to wait for an Avengers movie. We need to have it, and it doesn't need to be the end of the world sometimes, but this one will probably be. But let's get to it. Let's just go ahead and get it out of the way, solve this Kang problem, and move on to the next big bad along the way. In that same regard, the production charts are also saying that Armor Wars will begin filming in Atlanta in the UK in January 2025. So it sounds like they might be sharing some lot space over in their United Kingdom space to film this. Mike, if I told you, do you remember Armor Wars as being made into a movie? Would you say, yeah, I remember that, or no at this point?
Yeah, quite the journey for Armor Wars. I only internalized this project, and I say project because it was originally not a movie. It's just a logo to me, right? This is just one of those classic Marvel projects that's like, oh yeah, that was a great logo. What a logo it was. We all had a great time looking at it.
Don Cheadle's a great actor. He got an award for 30 seconds in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Let's bring him back into him.
They put him in front of Photoshop, and he was the one that exported it. Yeah. So he gets a Webby Award for that. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, War Machine, Don Cheadle, those two characters, I mean, they have really never had a chance to kind of become more than just a sidekick. And I mean that by like every definition of the word sidekick. Right. He was always just teamed up with Iron Man, or he was like
with Nebula. He was with Nebula
victim. Yeah. And like, or he like shows up in like cool armor every once in a while. He's always just kind of been like a bit, or like sometimes comedic relief. Actually, when I think of War Machine and Don Cheadle, I almost entirely think of him saying something quippy and funny. Like he has only really ever been serious when he's trying to get Tony to stop drinking, or when he's literally not that character.
When he's doing he's doing the military stuff, right? Like that's whenever he's serious. Yeah. I mean, to me, I agree. He's not been given a chance to shine. I think Don Cheadle can carry a movie, absolutely, and do it himself. And dealing, my concern is dealing with the legacy of Tony Stark and Iron Man. How long are we going to drag that out, right? Like, I get it. he's a huge part of the MCU movies. He might be a bigger part of this world, but like, can we find Armor Wars a way to make a difference without being like, oh, we miss Tony, oh, we miss Robert Downey Jr. Like, we don't need to do that over and over again for years and years to come. Like, he's out of the movie, he's happy doing, you know, Oppenheimer stuff, or, you know, being a Dr. Doolittle. So we don't need to go back and revisit that. I think if you give Don Cheadle something to act in and be the lead, we need to make it the lead, right? And not worry about that. But that's my biggest concern about this movie more than anything. Is like, we don't need more. Oh, poor Iron Man, he died years ago along the way. But I always forget. I agree with you. It's a logo. They need to have more substance to this. But hopefully, San Diego Comic-Con's coming up later this year. We'll get some news out of that.
Yeah.
Lastly, for the filming news is Shang-Chi 2, tentatively titled The Wreckage of Time. I think it's a great name. The movie is looking to start filming in the UK of March 2025. So when Avengers 5 is not necessarily wrapping up, but like kind of overlap a little bit there in that. We know Dustin Daniel Cretton will be coming back to this to film it. We know Simu Liu will be coming back to act in it. If this also takes place in between the two Avengers movies, is what the theory has been for a very, very long time, I think that'll be great. I'm excited to revisit this character who has not gotten any love since his debut, really, in that movie in fall of 2021 along the way. So
yeah, I mean, he had a fairly decent outing as Shang-Chi. I mean, some lingering questions that I still have about the universe at large that he kind of resides in. But yeah, I think people would like to see that character come back again. I follow Simu on Threads, and he likes to respond to people that are just like, oh, I really think we need a sequel to Shang-Chi. Marvel really is dropping the ball not announcing this one. Then he's just like, he'll respond and say, oh, I heard the main actor was kind of mid in that. So he really likes to have fun with his
and
his
I think your questions about Shang-Chi just need to be answered quickly rather than, you know, again, waiting 7 years between movies, right? Like that's a concern. I understand. We've talked about this till this podcast is half this podcast has been about Bob Chapek saying more content. You know, but you know, Bob Iger's response is focusing on the things that work. You know, Shang-Chi worked. It came out. It had a huge success in the pandemic. It did not do the simultaneous release that Black Widow did before. We actually have Black Widow news later to talk about. It came out. It had some great martial arts. It had some great stuff. It was a really fun movie. Surprising at the end of a new character could come out of Marvel and hit so well, but they should have really brought him back sooner, right? Just waiting for another, you know, 2026 release, possibly summer 2026, fall 2026. It's just way too long. So we need to revisit him and bring him back. And he's a great actor, right? He was in Barbie, a very infectious actor. I think they can bring him back and have some fun with this. And if it is Wreckage of Time, and we've also postulated with news/rumors that the Iron Fist, not necessarily the one we've seen before, but the new Iron Fist will be in this. I would love to see some of that martial arts team up along the way, right? That fighting and the Iron Fist fighting and get that together. So we'll knock on wood this is good, but you know, the fact that they're committing to some filming stuff next year, locking in those lots so they don't lose it like Batman did, that's gonna be a big win all around. Rumor time: Avengers versus X-Men the movie is rumored to be in development for a future Avengers title post Secret Wars and post the launch of X-Men. So getting this done ready early, you know, getting kind of setting the seeds, setting the stage down the road would be awesome. I think, Mike, what do you think about that title alone? Before we get into the comic book version, if we just had an Avengers versus X-Men movie, is that something that's going to get your juices flowing?
Yeah, I mean, AVX is one of the kind of last big comic book events that I read. You know, I've really kind of dropped off of like these big like summer moments that they have for comics in a while, but that one relies on a lot of, you know, history, right? You know, the X-Men are a pre-established superhero team. You have the Avengers as well. You know, they seem like two like opposing forces that could be entertaining to watch, right? The comic was interesting as well. I mean, I don't know if they're going to like bring the Phoenix saga back once again, something that was really been beating audiences over the head with this Phoenix idea.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I read, when this rumor was dropping, I was reading through the articles, the comments, and everyone's like, we don't need another Dark Phoenix saga. To hell with that. However, the idea of the Phoenix 5, right, the 5 X-Men people being powered with Phoenix-like powers and having to not necessarily off each other but beat each other to gain the full power, like a Highlander, is kind of an interesting idea at the end of the day, rather than just like, oh, Jean Grey's got the Phoenix powers again, what do we do with that kind of deal.
I mean, the best part about it, because there's no way when this movie comes out, and I think it will at some point in time, because talk about a tentpole title movie there, Avengers vs. X-Men. That's going to be amazing whenever they end up doing that, right? It's going to be compared to Civil War, because it's going to be the most logical comparison out there. The great thing about Civil War is, like, nobody was like body snatched, really. No one is like being manipulated by an external force and like, oh, we just gotta hit them on the head with a frying pan and they'll be like back to normal. None of that silliness. So it's just two opposing ideals in like Earth of how to deal with like superpowered people, and it made the story really compelling. So they'll need to find a way to do that or be better than that when you're kind of remaking the movie kind of in a way with X-Men and Avengers instead of splitting the Avengers in half. And on top of that, I mean, when this movie comes out, it means everything, right? I would think in my head, like, oh, I don't want to see Avengers vs. X-Men until the X-Men are properly rebooted. We have like a new, fresh team that has been around for a while. They've had maybe their own trilogy of movies. Then it makes sense to have them fight the Avengers. But also at the same time, like by the time that happens, our old kind of classic Avengers that we know and love on the big screen, they'll all be retired. So it's kind of like, if you force it to happen too soon, it might not earn the story as much, but you'll get to take advantage of seeing like Chris Hemsworth as Thor in it, right? But if you wait too long, you just have to hope that all of the moves and pivots and recasts that you've done in this new world, people like it.
I'm going to disagree on the length of time. I think you give them 2 movies. Similar to how, again, Captain America, we had 2 Avengers movies and then we had Civil War, which is Avengers 2.5, right, at the end of the day, that fraction that led into the events of Infinity War and Endgame. So I think you can do 2 X-Men movies, do an Avengers versus X-Men, and then how the third X-Men movie is the fallout of AVX, right? How do the mutants and the X-Men team deal with the fallout of AVX? And that's their trilogy at the end of the day. So you don't have to, I think there's a middle ground that you can do for those story arcs to not have to do both without not to do all 3 and then wait forever, but you have a kind of a short run with 2 movies, and then the third movie kind of deals with the fallout, so it builds the character story at the end of the day. I think the AVX storyline will be ignored primarily. I don't think we're going to get AVX. The comic book relies on, like you mentioned, decades worth of knowledge of comic books. The Phoenix Saga, the Avengers, including the Fantastic Four, dealing with breaking the Phoenix Force into 5 fragments. The 5 people who get the powers are Cyclops, Colossus, Magic, Namor, and was it Emma Frost at the end of the day? So to build up 5 Omega level mutants is going to be pretty hard. So I think we whatever we do, it's going to probably be, as you mentioned, very very much similar to Civil War, an ideal, right? The Avengers are doing good for good's sake. The X-Men are doing good, but they're still outcasts. They're they're not the same. They're trying to save mutants along the way. Which we'll see how that happens. But to me, to agree with what you said, when this comes out, this will be a huge movie, and it probably needs to fire on all cylinders, right? Like, I take a 4.5 out of 5 movie on this with just the title alone to hit that. We don't want to kind of drop the ball. Like, we did one X-Men movie, and now we're doing AVX. So, knock on wood for that success. But I'm thinking 2030, 2031. That sounds like a long way away, but that's only 7 years now. If you think about it, we're farther along than I'd like to admit. Sometimes. But what we needed the X-Men. We can't have AVX without the X-Men movies, and The news is that reports are saying that a writer for the X-Men movie for Marvel has been narrowed down, and we should expect an announcement in the next few weeks, possibly 3 weeks or so. Probably this will release post Secret Wars is what I'm thinking. Right? This is that reboot movie.
Like that's the question that we talk about all of the time. Is it would be funny if it just never happened, right? We are under the assumption that after Secret Wars there's going to be some sort of collapse, some sort of reordering, some sort of like reinforcement of this sacred timeline,
narrowing it down for the consumer masses, right? We're done with multiverses.
Restarting it all. It'd be funny if it didn't happen, but that's the expectation we have. We're expecting one significant mark on this sacred timeline where everything reboots. So is there a way to start an X-Men movie before that? That's the question I have. It makes the most sense to me to do that afterwards. Heck, you could even still do that thing that we talked about back after Endgame. When Endgame ended, we were like, oh, how are they going to introduce mutants into the MCU? Like, oh, well, maybe like the blip, everyone coming back, maybe that kind of kick-started the mutant gene in people, and people are going to realize they're all starting to get superpowers now. Well, that didn't end up happening. I don't know if they even technically could roll back and do it, because like Miss Marvel is like technically
that's like
a mutant.
She's got a mutation. She's got a mutation, not necessarily a mutant per se, but alluding to.
But I mean, maybe we have another cataclysmic event coming up with Secret Wars. Maybe that's what could restart us in a world with mutants, right? So if I'm trying to pitch a version of X-Men that starts for some reason before that, right? Maybe these X-Men are living in our current version of the MCU, and maybe they just feel generally, I don't know, maybe more accepted because our current version of Marvel Universe is kind of used to seeing big, giant, like people in the sky, a la Eternals. They're used to hearing about superheroes flying around like Manhattan and saving us from aliens. Like, oh, now there's mutants. Okay, it's just another day on Earth's, not 616. I forget the numbers for the MCU.
Oh, it's they call it 616. They call it 616 actually,
which is confusing.
Which
they
is
really
disappointing. They really should have got a different number. I'm gonna go, not to discount you. I think it's a great idea. I think I'm gonna go the other way and say maybe if they do it before Secret Wars, the idea is maybe like they're doing the Fantastic Four to say the X-Men are a different universe, and we are merging them in together post Secret Wars, and we now have to live with mutants they have existed. They have their own history. They've been in a world where they're accepted and universally loved, or maybe hated. I don't know. And they have to come to another world where like, oh, we now live with these people with powers, and we don't know how they got them or why they're here, and that causes the conflict with regular people and mutants along the way, because now it's just more of a shock, a system shock, that all these powered people live here and we can't explain why along the way.
I mean, you can't lose the core of the X-Men, which is the allegory for racism. That's what they were made for. That's the story that's always been told with them. It's the most compelling part of it's the internal driver for the X-Men 97 series. It's so in part of what makes mutants and X-Men that when that new movie gets written, that has to make sense in the world that we're presenting the X-Men in. So if that's the mainline sacred timeline, if it's like a fracture timeline, that's something I'm sure they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk about it, but yeah, like the X-Men thing is like, acceptance in a world of unacceptance. Like we are here to do good despite people, not thinking we're the same as them. So very excited. I hope the writer announcement soon, and maybe we'll get a director announcement with that as well, right? Like they'll probably have a bunch of stuff. So knock on wood for X-Men news coming up. I always forget this, and it's not necessarily bad, but Scarlett Johansson is an executive producer producing a project for Marvel, right? Post the Bob Chapek fiasco where they did the split release for Black Widow. So she is working on what has been, I think, confirmed or mildly confirmed as a Disney Plus series rather than a movie. So what she's working on, I think, is what someone said earlier this week. So she's a producer on the project, and she's not starring, she's not acting as it. So I'm going to think it's like a focus on Yelena or the Black Widow program. What do you think on that?
I mean, that would make the most sense. I mean, It's always interesting, right, when like an actor kind of moves into more of the creative role. So I'm just curious what that's going to be like, because she's obviously a talented actor. She's portrayed Black Widow for all of these years. So if she moves into this realm of being creative, it makes the most sense to kind of like the old adage of write what you know. She understands Black Widow. She knows the character. So she can maybe run with that world, and it makes sense her sister is the one to go into. There's always the part of the back of my head, though. It's like, you can never truly unlock and decode the term executive producer in Hollywood, right? Because it can mean so many different things. Like, there are executive producers out there who are the entire reason a show exists. They're the entire reason it's good. They're the ones who are getting their hands dirty every day. They are up late at night, up early in the morning, creating this vision. And then there's the executive producer that, like, oh, I just have this title so I can get more money because this studio owes me for doing all of this work to them, or they just want my name only. So that's kind of what I'm curious about. I can always be cynical with anything in Hollywood and be like, oh, this is just EP in name only to get some extra juice to the Disney Plus series. Or it's an EP in the true sense of it, and like Scarlett is really excited to dive deep into a Disney Plus series. I mean, we will truly never know until there's like a junket and she's there and excited to talk about it, or there's a junket and you don't hear from her at all.
Yeah, I think they're going to lean on her name, right? Even no matter which one she is, they're going to like, Scarlett Johansson is involved with this project. This is her baby. This is so on and so forth, even though it may not be at the end of the day. But I think they're really, like, to me, kissing ass for that 2021 Black Widow thing. Like, yeah, we messed up. You didn't get your money. You sued us. We settled, whatever the old Bob did. So they were like, look, to make it right, to keep you appeased, we'll give you full producer credit on this, and whatever benefits or perks come along with that at the end of the day. But I love Florence Pugh's Yelena, like, right? I could watch her eat mac and cheese out of a pot all day, and find it entertaining. I mean, that's what she's known for. But I also want to see Thunderbolts and see how she comes out of that. I think her growing up or changing over time, right? We've only seen her in Hawkeye, and as Hawkeye, what else was she in?
She was in. What? Oh God, we are really trying to figure this out.
She was in Black Widow, obviously Black Widow, but like also like after that Hawkeye, I think she was in it minorly. So really, she needs to come back and kind of bring that. And as Florence Pugh has become like an actress in Dune and Oppenheimer, she's got more kind of weight than she did 4 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, she could totally sell a movie or a show on her own.
Right. Yeah. So I'd love to see it. I also do not want to go backwards in time like the Black Widow movie did. That was great. It was fun, but we don't need to relive the Black Widow program that she grew up in along the way. So maybe they're able to fix that. Let's shift some gears into Disney Plus animated. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Do you remember this? The show's apparently a thing coming out. The directors of the show, or people who've worked on the show, Lisa Singer and Sue Livingston, who were directors on the show, are back at Marvel Animation as episode directors for an untitled/unannounced project that they're excited to be working on, Mike. So my guess is it's not more Spider-Man, right? Otherwise they'd say we're back for more Spider-Man. What if this is like a follow-up to X-Men 97's, like, hey, we're going to do Spider-Man 95 or whatever it is.
Man, that would be so cool. I would love that so much. I mean, they have familiarity with the character, obviously. Hopefully they have love for that animated show like I do as well. I mean, it's undeniable how well 97 is doing for them, and it would be weird if they don't capitalize it on some way. So, yeah, I could see them returning for something like that.
I would say the one animated show from Marvel I forgot to promote, like it's no tomorrow, it's Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes is one of my favorite animated shows, one of my favorite Marvel properties. we've talked about it here, and so many times with the Kang storyline. If you want to know Kang, they've got Loki storylines. They've got so much going on in that 2-season show. I cannot recommend it enough. I would love for that to continue, but it won't fit in this universe, and they probably won't continue it. But I would love to see the 90s Marvel animated stuff come back in some form, as we've mentioned before. Spider-Man, maybe a team up along the way, whatever they can do. But I think the grab of people, the Marvel animation continually, bringing in people they see success with is going to be huge to the future success of not just X-Men 97, but other animated shows along the way. So we'll keep you guys posted. If we hear anything from this, they say that we'll drop it whenever the press release comes out. Last bit of news before we get into our TV show discussions is Kraven the Hunter from Sony. They have delayed this movie, Mike, from August to December 13th. I believe they're trying to get away from the Deadpool and Wolverine window, which is not just 1 week. I'm guessing that's going to be a month-long movie, Mike, if I was a betting man. And the new Karate Kid movie, which features both Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio from the reboot, and then also the original Karate Kid, has been moved back into May of next year to give time for the Cobra Kai series, the final series, season 5, to wrap up as well. I know you're a fan of that show. You've watched quite a bit of it. So
yeah, Cobra Kai's great.
Kraven, I'm not very excited for. Should I be excited for the Karate Kid instead, Mike, is what I'm going to ask you.
What a shift for Kraven. If we were to just look at the history of movie release dates throughout the year and take it for its word, the sign Sony would like us to think is, wow, moving a movie from August to December, that's an upgrade. Only the best movies of all time have come out in December, like Star Wars movies, Avatar movies. I think if I remember right, a lot of the big James Bond movies have come out in December. That's when families go to the movie around the holidays, and that's when you get those big box office numbers.
Bond movies are also Sony releases, so it's funny you mentioned that, because they would probably think that. They'd be that delusional.
Yeah. But it's just like, Kraven, what are you doing? You do not belong in the month of December. That is hilarious. Especially, I'm not saying every movie that comes out in December has to be coded in the holidays at all, but this is like a man in the jungle who gets the power of a lion. And it's like, what are you doing in this month? That is insane. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it moves once more and it nudges into the following year. Like, maybe this is some sort of like shareholder appeasement strategy where it's just like, hey, we moved it to December. You should all be happy. This is great. This is good news. It's still going to come out in this calendar year. Let's all get excited. Then it's like, oh, shit, this movie sucks. Let's dump it in July.
So I'm going to go ahead. How many release dates do you think Kraven the Hunter has had, Mike, since this announcement?
Well, based on the tone of your voice, Chris, I'm going to guess more than 2.
That is correct. Do you remember? Okay. It is 4. It is 4. This is now the 4th release date this movie has had. Can you guess when the original release date for this movie was going to be? Just you can ballpark. If you give me a year, I'll help you narrow down the month. But.
I mean, based on the vibes of the movie, I feel like this is giving me February vibes. This feels like a February movie to me.
This was January 13th, 2023,
oh my
Mike.
God. I was right, January all along.
Yeah, so it's January 2023. By the time this hits December 2024, that's almost 2 full calendar years. That is 24 months that this movie has had to sit and fester and get infected and boil under our skins for 2 years. And how long it's been done. So number one, my guess is they're not fixing anything about this movie, right? There's no reshoots to make it better. They're not delaying it to say we want to improve this movie. They're delaying it because they're scared of Wolverine and Deadpool, and they should be. They should very well be. Also, Madam Web. Boy, did that get beaten at the box office. Like, not just like it wasn't beaten by somebody else. Literally, everyone just took a stick to that movie and just thwacked it till it was dead. And we're still beating this dead horse months later for Madam Web. So Sony's not on a roll with their Spider-Man universe at the end of the day. But can you just imagine filming this in like 2021, 2022, and then just waiting for it to come out? It's got what's his name? Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven and Russell Crowe in this. Two huge actors, two big name actors, and they're still afraid to remove it or release it at the end of the day. So I am just I want to watch this because I'm curious more than anything, right? We've seen the trailer. The first show, it shows the magic lion blood getting in his body. He can control animals. So it's not a real Kraven story. So I want to know what's going on, how they do the rhino. How bad is that CGI going to be? Pretty bad, I'm guessing. The curiosity is getting the better of me to watch this movie. But I'm not paying that holiday premium to go watch this in IMAX. I'll tell you that right now. Like, if I have to wait till it's cheap on a Tuesday during, after Christmas, I'll wait and watch it then. But, like, what hype I had, which was 1% out of 100, is now down to 0 because of this delay, right? Like, if they delayed it and said we're making things better, great. But they're delaying it just to delay it. That makes me even less excited to watch it when we have to. The things we do for this show, for you listeners on here, this is wild. So, Kraven might be Mike. What do you think? The death of Sony's Spum, the Spider-Man, Sony's Pictures universe of Marvel characters.
Is Kraven coming out after Venom 3?
Well, Venom 3, that's October of this year. So Kraven will be the last. Venom, I don't count because Venom has seen mild success just because of the character and Tom Hardy. Anything else Sony has touched outside of Venom has been dead on arrival, right? Morbius, Madam Web, now this. What was it? Silver and Black, the movie or show they were going to film. They canceled it the day before they were supposed to be filming. Like, the crew and cast are ready to get there and film, and they're like, no, we're not making it. So, yeah, you're right. This would be after Venom 3, which is October of this year. So, this might be the nail in the coffin, Mike. This is the dark universe for Sony. Anything you want to add to? I mean, honestly, again, we've beat this dead horse with a stick so many times. I don't know what to say for them.
We just let it die. Just let it die on the vine, please.
What? Again, anything can be good. We've been surprised before. But Sony does not have a track record to make me say that this is going to be good.
Nope, they don't.
We're going to be very, very, very non-optimistic about this, but we'll keep you guys posted as we see it in December. All right, X-Men 97. Now, full spoilers for everything going. We're going to talk X-Men 97, then Fallout from the rest of the show. So, X-Men 97, Mike, you were up to date. Correct me if I'm wrong on the.
Correct.
So, you've watched Life, Death Part 2. And now Bright Eyes. And I was able to watch Bright Eyes last night. So we're all on the same page. So let's get into Life, Death Part 2, which is the episode where Storm gets her powers back, which is no surprise to anybody who's been watching this show.
I mean, one way to describe that episode, to me, that is the episode where Charles Xavier comes back.
Yes.
I feel like
yeah.
that's the headline on the front page for that one.
Question, if I'm raising my hand here in person, which is not you can't see me, but question for you, Mike. Mm-hmm. Are you watching this on Disney Plus?
Yes.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. In episode 1, before episode 1, they did a recap of the X-Men 94 series, right? And and in that recap, they say Charles Xavier is thought to be dead, but he's really living with the Shi'ar, correct? They kind of give that away in the recap, or were you surprised to find him alive?
I don't remember exactly what they said in the recap. I knew he wasn't going to be dead because, we are too chronically involved with X-Men and superheroes
Comic
in general.
books, people can't say dead. That's how
But
it
I mean, my wife isn't really into this show as well, and I think most people just enjoying the show just as a normal human being, aka not us, are not going to remember the recap from the very first episode, recapping an entire series of a cartoon show. Right. So when he came back to life, my wife was like, oh, I thought he was supposed to be dead. So she was kind of confused. And I was like, well, at the end of the show, he was dead, but he's kind of taken by aliens. So he's still alive. So I could see that being a little bit of a sticking point for somebody that's just jumping on the X-Men 97, because they do kind of hit you over the head in every episode. Xavier is dead. He's dead. He's not coming back. He's dead. We got to do this on our own.
They very much leave
dead.
The Earth people very much are operating under the functionality that he is deceased and not alive, right?
Yeah.
and that'll come up in the next episode we talk about Bright Eyes. But you're right. I forget that Life Death was I forgot the Charles Xavier part, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I feel bad.
Which is crazy. I mean, the episode does two things really, really well, because Storm is off on her own and Charles is off on her own, and they both have no idea through their trials and tribulations that this genocide is happening on Genosha of all of these X-Men. So them both realizing it towards the end of the episode, of Storm sees it on the news, and then Charles just perceives it, when Gambit dies, because he can feel his X-Men just leaving this plane of existence, which is crazy because he's not even in their galaxy. I don't know what galaxy he's in, but that really mean sister, I don't remember her name.
The
she
ghetto
was like,
Milky Way.
Yeah, which was really funny to think like, oh yeah, people could. There is another race that could perceive our entire galaxy as just some sort of like Terran wasteland, as they would call us. But it was, I mean, it's great. This show is so great. Everything is great about it. The only episode that I really haven't been super into was the Life Death Part 1, because it just kind of felt incomplete overall. Cool stuff happened in it for sure, but it just felt like I did not feel satisfied after watching it. But these two episodes were amazing. Yeah,
Life Death Part 2, I think the episode, the Storm episode was split in half, if you will, right? Essentially, it's one full episode in two different areas. But to me, after seeing Remember It, it makes sense why the second half was here, right? We watched Remember It, everybody, thousands of mutants have died, and we come into Life Death Part 2, and it's kind of a hope, like, Charles is trying to bridge gaps with the Shi'ar and become accepted with them. Storm is learning to deal with the adversary and get her powers back and become essentially a new Storm, if you will. Like, she has new hair, she has her new outfit with the wings, which is from the comic books. It's fantastic. So it was a little bit of a hopeful episode, after an episode of just absolute utter gut punch, rip your heart out kind of thing. So I think that was great. I love both of those episodes. It was really interesting to me for Life Death Part 2, the Xavier part, the intro. You get to deal with the Mean Sister and her crew. You get to see the Gladiator, the character Gladiator.
Dude, Gladiator was so cool. Like, it's always great when you can take a character and then, they're just plugging these iconic characters into their animation pipeline, and they're just like, hey, what obscure X-Men character do you want to be the coolest thing ever this week? Oh, let's do it to Gladiator. And he's essentially using all of Superman's powers. So my assumption is when this character was invented in the comic books, they're like, oh, just make him Superman. Because that's exactly what he's doing, basically, on the screen.
Well, the Shi'ar Empire, there's there's the Smasher and a couple other people on the team, and they're all imbued their powers when they get that role. So Gladiator, gets the role and he gets his powers. It's great, but to see there's a dude there with his flaming eyes. I don't know if you remember this. There's a character there with flaming eyes who's about to, I guess, execute the people that are attacking the Kree. That's Vulcan, who is the third Summers brother. He's the brother of Scott Summers, who comes up in comic books later. So it's cool to see him in space, and Vulcan's a deep cut for me, and I absolutely love that. So it was really cool to see these deep cut characters. Even in Bright Eyes, Morph takes on the role of Quicksilver for a little bit, which was really fun to see. So I love how the show is able to do a bunch of deep cut characters, but not make it feel gratuitous. Like, it feels like, oh yeah, this would be here in that moment, right, kind of thing, along the way. The Shi'ar thing, I think that part of the episode is forgettable to me, because that story trope is like as old as time, right? Like, oh, we want to get married. We're two different cultures. How will you ever fit in with my culture? My sister wants to rule the team because, me marrying you isn't right. So that was a trope as old as time, if you will. But the fun part was where Charles is like, I'm going to be a teacher now and teach all you stuff, kind of things. He used, what was the word he used? He's like, demerits. I'm like, oh God, he's a British school teacher.
Yeah, he took him to school. It was great. But you were talking about how the storyline did seem a little rote, to the point where my wife and I were like yelling at the screen, and I was like, how dare you ask Charles to give up his memories so he can be with you? That's changing who he is as a person down to his core. You wouldn't even be marrying the same man. So it's just like, we're almost like not mad at the show. We're mad at her for thinking that Charles should do that for her. And I'm glad he kind of came to his senses that, he can't change who he is. But it is definitely a struggle. I could believe a character in this very unique situation could be struggling with this idea of like, yeah, he's struggled his whole life and now he can finally have this freedom and acceptance, but he can't even really get accepted around these people anyway. So it really hits home.
A bunch of old cronies running that show is what they made it.
Oh my God, I think the giant Gambit skeleton. That was a moment that I had to go back and pause and look at because I was like, oh, this is metal. This is like That's the deep. Front of a metal album for sure.
Yeah. And then the not to belittle the Storm thing, coming to terms with Forge and the character of the adversary who's just like chomping at her doubts, right, the whole time, like, oh, you're negative, like you're no one, you're nothing, you without your powers, kind of thing. It was fun to see that and see her kind of overcome that journey along the way for that character. I'm glad to see Storm, and I love to see her come back in her black outfit, if you will, the queen of the elements is what that outfit is. So that was great. But jumping into this week's episode, Bright Eyes, we come back to Earth, we come back to the X-Men. Boy, they give Rogue some badass animation sequences here, even with a throwback to her Marvel versus Capcom kick scenes, right? Like there's like a panel with her foot coming down towards the screen there. I'm like, oh man, they're really having a good time having Rogue beat the shit out of these General Ross's base, if you will.
Yeah, this is one thing that I always love about animation or cartoons in general. It creates a world in which I can believe if a character gets mad enough, their power level will increase like tenfold. Like this is like the DBZ coded brain that I was grew up with, of just like, oh yeah, you give any superhero a reason enough to go fight somebody and they'll be unstoppable. I mean, we kind of saw that with Gambit when he was trying to save Rogue, the love of his life. He put it all on the line and he was able to do the unthinkable and blow up this gigantic like master mold. And then Rogue, when she's pissed off and she believes she's lost two of the loves of her life, she can like fly into a secret government facility and she can like literally slap tanks together, and it's amazing.
Yeah, well, that, and they're like, oh, we built, they obviously set it up. They're like, okay, we built this base to deal with the Hulk, and then she busts through the ceiling, and they're like, oh, okay, she is upset. She's on a mission here. We're not gonna let her slow down. So we got to see that. They're looking for Henry Gyrick, the creator of the Sentinels. That's the whole point of this, right? We're going to find the person who made this big master mold and did the massacre along the way. Then we also get to see, speaking of Rogue, at the end of the episode, she is not for mercy. She is not out for forgiveness. She is out for blood, if you will, life for life. And, she drops him off the top of the building, which was a cold moment for X-Men. Like, we've seen a lot of them be humane and forgiving, and like, I don't want to do this, but this is what we have to do to be thing. And Rogue doesn't prescribe to that, if you will, right? At the end of the day, she's very much out for emotional compensation at the end of the day. So it was interesting. It was great. I love every one of these episodes, Mike. They all come together in such great ways. They all deliver more than I expect when I'm watching them, and I can't put my finger on what it is sometimes, but I'm like, I don't expect you to be this good of an animated show, a cartoon show. I expect the action and the excitement of seeing flashy colors and funny powers. But, there's a scene where Beast is talking to the reporter, right? Telling her, like, kind of saying, like, we're tired of, thank you for your, it's not acceptance, your tolerance, right? We don't want to be tolerated. We want to save mutant lives. And it was interesting to kind of find that through this episode. I will say the end, there's two things. The end of the Bright Eyes sticks out to me, Mike. And I don't know if you want to talk about anything before we get to the end.
No, I wanted to bring that up because this was interesting because they really lead up to this reveal of like, oh, who is the big bad that's been pulling the strings these whole time? And I'm racking my brain of just like, oh, what big X-Men villain is this going to be? Is this, who are we going to see? Is this going to be like, Apocalypse, or who am I going to see revealed from the shadow? And then I was like, oh, it's just some dude. He doesn't look familiar to me. I did a little bit of Googling And it seems to be a character that exists already within, the lore of X-Men.
Yeah.
I am not familiar with the guy at all.
So the villain comes out to be Bastion. Bastion is a character who was created in 96, so he would have been created about the time the animated show was wrapping up. So he wouldn't have had time to be in there. But he is the culmination of the combination of two Sentinels, the Master Mold, which you're familiar with, right? And then the Nimrod Sentinel. Are you familiar with the Nimrod Sentinel?
Oh, yeah, Nimrod. See, what do I know Nimrod from? That sounds so familiar.
He is like purple and white and has like a big, like a upside down diamond kind of stature, like a silhouette when you look at him.
Yeah.
So it's the evolution of the Sentinels, if you will. So he is the combination of those two characters in the comic books, and so he doesn't really know in the comic books. He doesn't originally know that he's a combination. He comes to find out that he is that. So he can create prime Sentinels out of people, as we saw in this episode, right, with Henry Gyrick. Whenever he died and kind of, or not died, but he came back as a prime Sentinel with the ability to really take down the Sentinels. And he's working with Mr. Sinister, which, we've kind of seen set up as a villain. I thought he was going to be the big villain reveal, not Bastion at the end of this. But they are working together to create Sentinels that do take down mutants at the end of the day, or at least neutralize the X-Men along the way for that. So we're going to get the next 3 episodes are 3-parters, some really deep Sentinel lore, but the thing that stops them is an electromagnetic pulse, if you will, or whatever it was called, by Cable, who is officially back in these episodes, Mike. Cable, the time traveler X-Men, who is the son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor.
And Scott knows now because that was revealed in that last episode. And Cable doesn't really seem to want to waste time trying to talk to his dad. So definitely some parent issues there. Some family drama happening between the two of them.
Absolutely. It's a Summers family. It's not a Summers family. There's no drama involved in.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I wonder, I know this show, you're probably not supposed to be dissecting the timeline so much, but Scott did have an interesting line where, because Cable has existed in this animated universe already before. He's already been a character that's interacted with the X-Men, come and gone. They've had their own adventures, right? And him going, oh, this whole time it's just been you. So that makes me wonder, oh yeah, has the Cable that we've seen at the early version of the X-Men animated series always been Scott Summers' son?
Yeah.
Or maybe he has and just nobody knew, so there was no point to bring it up. So, it was a good, smart line to kind of drop in to kind of be like, okay, we get it. We know Cable's been in this show before, but now there's a little different reason behind it.
Yeah, he's always, in the comic books, it's always been Nathan Summers. It's always been Scott Summers' son. Now, maybe it's not this Scott Summers, but, they are leaning into that in the show, and I think that's great to do that. Now, I will say Cable has the power to, this episode is very adamant about burying Gambit, right? Having a funeral, putting him in the ground. Do you think Cable will bring Gambit back because of, again, he's a very hugely popular character over the years, and B, to kind of undo this? But I don't want them to undo anything. I feel like, death is death when they bury a body, right? That's the important part. They buried a body, and Gambit had his send off, and we were evolving as a world going forward without him at the end of the day, despite how cool he is. And then the reveal that Magneto's alive, obviously, and is getting a shave by the Bastion character at the end of it was kind of wild a little bit.
Yeah, very, very weird. Obviously not surprised that he's still alive. I mean, we saw Gambit, as clear as day, die and then get buried in the ground. And then we're not going to believe Magneto's dead because he kind of died behind an explosion, and then there was no funeral.
Yeah. But, there's a lot to go in these 3 episodes. I honestly, despite my knowledge of the comic books and knowing these characters, I have no idea where they're going to go. I'm very, intrigued. I'm excited. The end also, the end of this episode brings everything together, right? It shows Bastion knows Xavier is still alive despite nobody else knowing this. He has Magneto alive in his captivity. He can turn any human into a prime Sentinel that he wants, and Cable's back. So literally all these elements stirring into this pot together for X-Men 97 say, whatever you think you know is going to happen, to hell with you, because we have all the elements to shake it around and deliver anything that you don't expect in the next 3 episodes. Like I said, as a 3-parter, I have no idea what to expect, but I love watching this show. I love watching X-Men 97 deal with these stories. I love watching the animation, the quality of it, but also not being respective of the traditional animation of the 90s, the storylines, the voice acting. Why is this coming together so perfectly, Mike? How did they do this in a vacuum and then release it for us so well?
Just a lot of care, a lot of attention, and like we always say, like, I mean, the original source material is good, so it's not so much of a surprise that this has been even better, but it's just nice to watch something that's so good, right?
Yeah, it is. If you feel the reverence to the source material, both the comics and the show, and I don't want just 1 season. I want 3 seasons. Give me 3 seasons. I don't need 5. Give me 3. I'll be happy with 3. I think the original one even had 4. So if we have to do 4 seasons, we'll do 4 seasons. But I'm just thoroughly impressed that they're able to make this in a vacuum, not related to the MCU, but still deliver on everything Marvel and X-Men along the way. And I am here for the X-Men in 2024, Mike. My hands are raised for the X-Men this year. So cross fingers that this continues to deliver for 3 weeks. And then Deadpool and Wolverine delivers on some more X-Men. To wrap the show up, I'm going to talk about Fallout myself. Mike, you've watched this whole show. So I've watched half the show based on everything. And people may or may not. My cat has been sick. She's had an ear infection. She's been wobbly. So we can't really sit down and watch it. We've had to babysit a cat this week. She's doing fine. For everyone who's going to ask me, she's doing great. We're healing. So last night we were able to sit down and binge 3 episodes of Fallout, Mike. And I just got to the part where Matt Berry was the voice of the robot in the mall. Yes. So it's really interesting to see. They're really holding back on the origin of the ghouls as characters, but dripping, no pun intended here, hints throughout to say, like, yeah, these are people who have had something done to them. And if they don't drink this little potion, they kind of revert into like almost kind of zombies or like, monsters of a kind. So I'm interested to learn more about that. Episode 4 is the turning point. I was kind of getting annoyed with the main character's goody two shoes shtick, right? Like she's always like the golden rule, do unto others, do what you were going to do. Everything in the wasteland is good at heart, and I believe in it. And then she has to fight her way out of the mall, and she comes out and she's out of her Vault Tech suit. She's down to her t-shirt and bandages, and she's like, look, I'm not like everyone. I'm not going to kill you. Here's the vials, but, the golden rule, motherfucker, I think was her exact words as she walked away. So I'm like, okay, I'm digging this as they're setting up for the back half of this show. But I will tell you, and don't tell me if they fix this or not, but my biggest complaint is the dude who took over Knight Titus's armor. He could have made up a better lie than his squire dying and then getting in the suit on the spot. Like that is. I'm like, how are you going to get yourself out of this, you dumbass? You've made the worst lie in the world here. So obviously you still have a few more episodes of the show, but you kind of have run into 2 of the bigger issues I have with the show overall. I will state that I do like the show. It's very interesting. Absolutely.
I would love to watch another season of the show. They're doing a good job putting all of that money on the screen and making something competent.
The world is great. And the characters in it, we're watching them literally evolve as the show goes on, and I think that's great. And that's not my complaint. I agree with you. My complaints are like things that are going to evolve as the characters exist in this world, but like, boy howdy, like these are like really, really rookie mistakes along the way. But continue.
The character that I keep wanting to call him Knight Titus, even though he kind of takes over Knight Titus's armor. I just don't remember the character's name. He's just a very interesting, unique character. Like he's kind of wacky and goofy, but also stupid. But is he brave? Is he supposed to be redeemable? I don't really know. He just kind of seems like a dipshit, for lack of a better term. So I don't know if I'm really supposed to be rooting for this guy overall, because he just seems so dumb, but not in a lovable kind of way, but at least I'm being entertained watching it. So his character is kind of weird to me because I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel when I'm watching him on screen. But also a very nitpicky thing happens in the episode that you just watched, Chris, that is a pet peeve of mine overall in any TV show that I watch, right? So and it's the moment when she's trapped on that stretcher when the Matt Berry robot is about to cut into her and steal her organs, which is it's a funny scenario to be in when she thinks she's going to be healed, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I wouldn't do any of that to you. I'm just going to take your organs.
I'm giving you a finger, but I'm taking your organs."
Very, very funny line there. But when you specifically take a character in a scene and you back them into a corner that they need to get out from, especially when you don't think that they're going to die, like, oh, this is the main character of the series, I don't think she's about to get her organs stolen, but she needs to get out of this situation. And being a television show that is meant to entertain you, I would like to be surprised and delighted by the way that she escapes. Either she uses a part of her personality, maybe she charms the robot and convinces her to let her go. Maybe since they showed her at the beginning of the show, she has all of these extra skills involved.
The deviled eggs
that she's trained. Yeah, like maybe so. Yeah, maybe that could have been a funny way to work. I don't know how they could have done it, but something could have happened there. But what it ends up happening is she just kicks the robot with her leg, and the saw just happens to cut her loose from the bed, and it's just like, oh, this feels a little lazy. Like,
well, I think
we could have done something a little bit more clever here.
That part I'm fine with. It's the defibrillators is where I get into it, right? Like, why? There's no. You mentioned this. There's no setup for how she gets out. Nothing that's on her. It's all dumb luck, right? She kicks it over, breaks her free. Okay, I can get past that. But then she just happens to grab defibrillators and shocks the robot to death. That's where I get it. I'm like, oh, come on, be more creative in this one scene. It's one scene on the whole, and I'll agree with Mike. The show's great. One scene on the whole doesn't ruin the whole thing, but like,
but when you
have so many opportunities in this show. We literally watched your ghoul blow through body parts, right? We watched a dude get his leg grinded up to get a metal foot, 2 episodes before. Do better than this.
Yeah, but when Jonathan Nolan is behind it, and you see what happened in the world of Westworld, where it just, in my opinion, went absolutely off the rails to the point where Max didn't even want to finish it, really. There's a part of me that's just like, I'm worried Jonathan Nolan and his long-term ability to tell this story. But I do feel a little bit more safe that like Bethesda and the whole video game lore and franchise and creatives are behind it, like shepherding it along,
Yeah, I don't feel like I thought there would be more mystery boxes along the way, if you will. Jonathan Nolan and kind of like J.J. Abrams, like Lost and stuff like that. There's a lot of similarities between the two. I like Westworld. I think it's fun. Even though it goes off the rails and it shouldn't be called Westworld after season 2, it should be called something else in season 3 and 4. I still enjoy it. However, you mentioned, like Todd Howard, the Bethesda people, like, no, this is our universe and you have to follow these rules. At the end of the day, we can't make too much. I did enjoy, like, was it episode 3, the start of 3 or the end of 2, where she has to cut the dude's head off, the main, like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're actually, like, I thought they were just going to drag him along for 6 more episodes, not cut his head off at the end of this one and deal with that. I'm like, that's actually much more different than I expected, so let's do with that. And also the very on the nose statement of Walton Goggins, the ghoul. He's like, I'm tired of all this side quest bullshit or whatever he says. Like in episode 3, he's like, I have to go do something else because I need my drink, and we're not going to deal with this head right now. So we're literally doing a side quest like the Fallout games, Mike. And I was like, that's fun.
That's a great segue, because I wanted to talk at the top of the show that I've been playing Fallout 4, and I was lucky enough to get it on sale from PSN, PS5, or wherever else you want to play it.
They're all on sale. For anyone who hasn't played these, they're all on sale right now. Go buy them up on whatever platform.
Actually, I don't know how much they're on sale now, because when I bought it, I did see an end date for the sale listed that was coming up soon. So they could still theoretically be on sale, but they might not be as cheap as, like, I got Fallout 4 for $5. I got New Vegas for like $7 or something, maybe
Yeah.
$8. It was like $12 in whole, and I got these 2 games. And then on top of that, I got the next gen upgrade, which I didn't even know was a thing happening for Fallout 4. So I think you know more of the details, but like they boosted like the frame rate, and maybe some other things.
So Fallout 4 came out 9 years ago, so it's not by any means an old game. But it uses the same engine, the creation engine, as like Skyrim and I think even Starfield these days. So they upgraded it to 60 frames per second and 4K. The differences aren't that drastic, but the fact they're still putting some love, some polish on these games that are old from them is huge. That's a big win for everybody. There's a Fallout London mod coming for PC that they've delayed a little bit to get this next gen mod out. So for those who have not dived into it, you're going to be playing the best version when you buy it, kind of going forward, if you will.
Yeah, it's been a learning curve for sure. Because one thing that always puts me off from video games is jumping into a world that's kind of already been established. The fan base is already all over it. So the developers feel like they don't have to handhold as much. But like, I've never played any Bethesda game before. Skyrim, Oblivion, any other Fallout game. So I am like fresh-faced baby. Like, I'm literally like a vaulter coming out of a vault, like not knowing how to handle this world. And I got to learn, not only do I have to learn how like the story and the world works, I just have to learn how the controller and the mechanics and the VAT system works and everything. And it's really intimidating. And there was almost a point where I kind of just my wife called me, she was on the way home and I had her on speakerphone and she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm playing Fallout and I'm trying to decide if I like it or not," which is funny because usually right away if you're liking something or not liking it. But I was like, I can't tell if I'm on the precipice of about to learn more of these systems and really enjoying it, or I'm just like, this is too much. I don't want to play this at all. But luckily we had some friends over last night and one of them is very seasoned in the Fallout universe. So I was like, oh, great. I'm glad that you're here. I'm going to ask you a ton of very specific questions because
quick, beat this boss for me.
Yeah, he had a lot of info on Fallout 4 specifically. So I was asking him all of these like nitty gritty questions of just like, how often should I be using the VAT system compared to like first person shooter? Like, when do you use VATs? I'm collecting all of this stuff everywhere, all of the time. I have no idea what to do with any of it. And I'm afraid to get rid of any of it. And when will I run out of room? And so he gave me a ton of info, a lot of context around the game too, which I think is going to help me enjoy it a lot more. I'm currently on a mission where I have to clear out like this big, like, I don't know if it's like a chemical plant or a warehouse or something, still very early in the game. And my mission is just to kill all of the raiders that are there. They're causing our settlement a lot of trouble. Just kill them all. So there's no like get to point A and then B, C, D. It's just get to point A and kill everyone. So it's this really big area. So I'm really starting to learn the combat a little bit more. I just found my first terminal where I could figure out how to hack, which is harder than I thought it was going to be, even though it's just basically like a New York Times kind of Wordle situation. So I'm trying to figure that out as well.
These games are so big and they have so many mechanics right along the way, if you will. I hate base building. That's what caught me off Fallout 4. I don't care to build a goddamn base, so I just kind of stopped.
I'm glad that you brought that up because that was a question that I asked him. I was like, I found a menu where I can build a shack. Is this something I need to pay attention to? Because this kind of seems like something that was added on for seasoned players, and it's something that I can ignore until at least maybe I replay the game. He was just like, oh yeah, I played the whole game without building anything. I was like, okay, that's good because this is like a very intense system and I don't understand it.
My sister-in-law rebooted it and started a new game after watching Fallout last week, and she's in love with it, and she got the new upgrade pack as well on her PlayStation, so they're loving it, and it's for certain people. Listening to the show, Marshall, he messaged in. He's our Fallout guy in the chair. He said he was telling me where I was wrong and everything else. I'm like, thank you, because I don't remember. I played Fallout 3 in New Vegas when they came out. Like, it was nobody's business on 360. But, like, Fallout 4, once we got into the base building, I kind of just dropped off. But he mentioned, we don't have this luxury. On the PC version, they actually have a mod that streamlines all the base building, so you don't have to do it. And I was like, oh, that'd be great, because I don't like base building and stuff like that. But, one of the things I was live texting Mike while I was watching the show. I think it was episode 2 or I think maybe 3. all the quirky side characters and like worlds, like levels of the show feel like they're ripped straight from the game, right? Like all the like the weird dialogue and like kind of odd characters. Like I forget the lady, I don't know the lady's name, who was at the shop where Lucy was trying to figure out who took her dad, but there was like some lady in the back, like a little lady, and she's the one who put the foot on the doctor, right? I was like, she's like very interested about eating some sort of food. I'm like, this sounds like a Fallout character through and through. All the quirky side characters along the way, or the lady, the guy who was trying to get Lucy to live with him because he's sick and has a house with like no raiders, but he doesn't have clean water. I'm like, this feels just like a Fallout character, and I love those moments that don't do anything, they don't add up to anything, but they feel like Fallout. And I'm gonna say the biggest one, and pardon my French for anyone listening, but it's the chicken fucker, if you will, the guy who's selling snake oil, and he's like, Titus, quote unquote Night Titus. He was like, hey, don't fight him. He's like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't want to interrupt you, but he was having sex with my chickens, and he's like, oh, okay. And then he shows up later in another episode at the town of Philly. So I'm like, oh, this is all these weird post-apocalyptic world characters are there, and I cannot wait for you to interact with some of those weird ass people in your game, Mike, along your journey. I'm enjoying the show. I cannot wait to watch the back half. I feel some of the mystery boxes with the ghouls are being laid along the way, right? There's the two timelines, the pre-bomb Walton Goggins character who keeps showing up as an actor. There's and who we come to find out, and correct me, is he the Fallout boy? Is he Pit Boy? Is that why they're taking his photos?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because he does the thumbs up, and then they cut to the thumbs up, and he's always shooting the Pit Boy posters along the way.
I don't know if it's like explicit or not, or if it's just like, oh, it's like a reference of like, oh, I did a thumbs up for a marketing campaign, so now thumbs up is just used within the branding universe of Vault Tech. Mm-hmm. I don't 100% remember.
Yeah, it felt like he was like when they were like there was a photographer taking all his photos. I'm like, oh, he did the thumbs up, and then they're like, oh, this is the thumbs up Vault Boy. So they're taking the photos to animate over him later to be Vault Boy. But I'm excited. We're looking to finish it this week. We're hopefully gonna have a lot more time and knock it out. It's about dinner time here, so I'm gonna be knocking on that and probably eating and watching some Fallout. But I'm excited to watch more, Mike. And it sounds like we'll be talking about maybe next week. Next week will be the last week we talk about it. But I'm excited to get your Fallout 4 journey along the way, kind of as you kind of casually play through that.
I'll keep everyone updated.
I love the VAT system, and the last thing I'll add is here in episode 2 or 3, the Western scene, right, where you mentioned the shootout with him, where he literally like. It looks like he slows down and shoots through somebody and into the head of another person or vice versa. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, that's the VAT system. I love the VAT system, the slow down and the explosion of the body parts. So hopefully you're getting that along the way as you play. Anything else, Mike, for Fallout before we jump into the end of the show?
I think that is a good episode, Chris. You managed to make it through. Barely. The White Claw, the brewery visits. Did you end up buying the Star Wars Phantom Menace cooler?
The problem, Mike, is that I run too many windows for this podcast when we're live streaming that I can't open up eBay without losing a time code or something else. But maybe it's going to give me something to think about tonight when I can't go to sleep because I drank too much. And I'm like, what should I order tonight? I will say I ordered a power cord for my Sega Genesis yesterday, the Tower of Power. I think we've talked about it before. The 32X, the Genesis, and the Sega CD. They have a power cord now. One power cord feeds all three, so you don't have to have 3 separate power cords. So I was pretty happy with that purchase this weekend. But I try not to buy too many frivolous things because, I'm saving for plane tickets so I can come see you. But if people want to know what you're up to, what you're doing, where can they find you at, my friend?
Oh, they can find all of my goods and wares at liferewardsrisk.com or pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Valdan87, VALDAN, or Video Game Systems of the same name. If people want to know about the show, where we're recording, listening, or where we're live streaming even. We've got like 5 live streams going today because why the hell not? Where can they find us at?
All things Superhero Slate reside in the vault of superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find all the avenues we host our show, get our awesome show notes. You can go back in time, 400, almost 500 episodes of this show, and you could just see all the random bullshit that we've been talking about all these years, all chronicled in our awesome show notes that Chris has been putting together forever now. We love him for that. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen or watch fine podcasts. You can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. Reach out. Let us know, what do you think of Fallout, the universe in general? What game should I play after Fallout 4? It's probably going to be New Vegas because I own it. So if that makes sense to you, let me know. We love our super fans. If you want to be a super fan of this show, it's oh so easy to do. All you have to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.